As we take it back a little bit into the, college days, decided to go to Alabama. You get the honor of working and playing for, one of the best coaches that we've seen in college football. Usually very hands-on with his DBs. What's your best Saban story, that you feel like only his DBs know about and that you learned from playing in the secondary?
Not a lot of people know Saban was really with the DBs, like each and every day in the DB meeting rooms. So I remember like one practice, it was like my freshman year. The playbook like this big and like a whole bunch of plays, whole bunch of, adjustments to certain formations. So it was like reading Chinese at first, you know what I mean? So I'm going into the book trying to recognize a specific play, and I went over it in the notes. Then we get into practice, and it was just one team period. And I got in there, and the first play that was called was that exact play. So in my head, I'm going through it. I'm like, okay, what I do to this formation? What's my role? Like, what's this coverage? So in my head, I'm thinking, and I went into this one specific zone, and I fucked it up. And I knew I fucked it up because the guy I was supposed to cover was wide open. So next thing you know, I'm like, man, I fucked that up. I go back to the huddle. Next thing you know, I see a whole, like a straw bucket hat fly on the ground. He's like, God damn it, Patrick. We went over this in the film meeting room. You got to get that shit together. Then I looked. I was like, yep, I fucked that up. Because he was on my ass about it like the whole day. That's what he expect out of his guys, just greatness, being able to apply what you see in the meeting room to the field. So after that, I ain't mess up one thing after. I kept that coach's trust for sure.
How was it, obviously lining up against so many future pros and, unbelievably stacked group you're going against every single week? Who do you feel like during those times at Alabama was just tough to go up against and line up against every single day?
Man, I'll say this, bro. I think we had like probably the most crucial receiver lineup in college football history.
It's tough.
We had Devontae Smith, Heisman winner. We had Jerry Jeudy, Balentikov winner. We had Jalen Waddle and Henry Ruggs. It's self-explanatory. Going up against those guys every day, it seemed like a game day atmosphere. Like each and every Saturday, it felt like it was easier because in every practice, you was going up against those guys who are now like at the top of the game in their position. So, it's good going up against those guys because we made each other better, each and every practice. And looking back at it, I was like, I don't take those moments for granted because I know how much better I could get just from practicing against those guys. So,
that 2020 Alabama team goes undefeated, wins the national championship against Ohio State. What do you think is the most significant memory or story from that national championship run for you guys?
That year was COVID year. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation on if the season should continue. I remember going to the facility with our masks, having captain meetings each and every week to figure out if, we should have this season. And I remember like us as a team, the seniors, the juniors, and the captains, we all met and was like, man, what do we think about the season? Because obviously, like, I guess the SEC officials, the NCAA was still trying to figure out, if the season should continue because it was like a prolonging situation on, the risks at hand with COVID and how that may shift things, the difficulties of having games. But I feel like that meeting, everybody's like, nah, we gonna go into the season with a national championship mindset. Like, we put the work in, throughout the spring, just to have that canceled, we wasn't going for it. So I remember, having a meeting and we all was like, nah, we gonna have the season continue and go win the Natty. And then we went on an undefeated run, whole SEC gauntlet. So it wasn't easy, but the guys was locked in and we made a run for the Natty and we won it. So
you got to feel like that's one of the best, Alabama football teams of all time, huh?
Yeah, got to. Just top down the talent. We had about like 7 to 8 first-round picks that year. So, that speaks for itself.
Throughout your time in Alabama, the amount of guys who have come through there, Jalen, Tua, Mac Jones, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae, Diggs, Jacobs. The list goes on and on. How good did that Clemson team in 2018 have to be to knock you guys off?
They had to be pretty good, honestly. To beat the type of team we had, I I don't like to talk about that game too often, but I was supposed to have 2 natties, by the way, but, it's all good. Clemson, they had a good team, though. They had our number for sure. It'd be like that. It was any given Saturday, any given Sunday. So, they got the best of us. They outnumbered us, outcoached us. It's a game of football. You win some, you lose some. But it was definitely something for us to learn, a learning experience going into the next year. For us, it was not to have that feeling again. So, we learned from it, and we got ourselves better at the end of the day.
We made it right a couple years later for sure, too.
Yeah, no doubt.
Bryce Young was a backup on that 2020 team. You saw him in Week 8 last season. He ended up picking him off.
Yeah.
You got to look at his his game and feel like even though he struggled a little bit, he's going to get things back on track and he's going to be all right. He's obviously a hell of a player.
Yeah, he's a great player. I mean, he's just like laid back and chill. His personality and when he got to the league, obviously he wasn't put in the best position, as most. So obviously we see the potential. And, I've seen it, with him as a freshman, stepping in Alabama and, making crazy throws and stuff like that. So, I'm looking forward to his success. I'm rooting for him. A fellow Alabama guy I'm always root for. So, his potential is through the roof. And, I think he's going to have a big season this year for sure.
Your former Bama teammate Henry Ruggs spoke recently. This is a little bit in the news of him going out and speaking and obviously wanting to return to the league. Have you gotten a chance to speak to him at all? And, if not, what are you hoping for him in his situation?
Yeah, I spoke to him prior. Obviously he's in positive spirits and good hopes. Obviously his actions doesn't justify who he is as a person. It's one mistake, one big mistake, obviously, but he's in good spirits and good hopes. I'm wishing the best for him. He's my guy at the end of the day. So we all talk to him, fellow Alabama guys. So we keep in touch, stay in the loop with him. But he's in good spirits for sure. So.